Well, today I want to share with you something that is kind of almost a bit of a secret weapon of some of the better bird carvers. It's a sanding stick. It's a really low-tech, simple thing. You can make them yourself, but they're incredibly versatile. Use them for all kinds of different things. I'll explain that a little bit more in the video. But we want to get going today. I'm just going to show you how to make some, and I'm going to explain some of the benefits and advantages of the different kinds of sanding sticks. And what you're going to need to start with, you're going to need some kind of sticks to make them out of. I quite often people use paint sticks even. I use this for 1/8 inch mahogany plywood. I built a few kayaks and we've got little cutoffs left from this 1/8 inch marine plywood, which makes really nice sanding sticks. But anything that's thin and straightforward like this will work really well. Um, Paint sticks work great. There's no problem there. The other thing is I use these a lot in my work. Just get some stir sticks from a local coffee shop if you can get them, or you can buy them at craft stores, little stir sticks, and even things that we might call popsicle sticks or tongue depressors, different size sticks that you can use a whole variety of things. It's useful to have a bunch of different sizes. What I'm mainly going to focus on today is these little ones that I make out of stir sticks, and the benefit in using those. We're currently doing a class on carving a open wing bald eagle, and we've been working on getting these wings established. And because of the grain of the wood running this way, we're running into the odd problem where the grain makes a little bit of a washboardy type effect. And these sanding sticks are one of your best secret weapons for knocking down grain issues. If you're encountering grain, whether it's big on a whole carving, you want to smooth things down, or you just want a really local level, like a little wing like this, you want to do that. So I'm going to go over the process that I use in making and using these sticks, a few little tips. Okay, so some of the things you're going to want, maybe even need, a pair of scissors comes in handy for cutting up your sandpaper. You will ultimately need some sort of a sharp knife with ideally a snap-off blade works really, really well. You'll want that later on. You're going to need some sandpaper. What I'm using, what I really like is I like this Swiss sandpaper. I'm going to make some 220 grit sticks here. I'll probably make a few 120 grit sticks a little later. I've got some 120 grit Sia paper here. This stuff stays nice and sharp, cuts really well. It's got a very thin cloth back. I find it works really well for these kind of sticks. And but whatever paper you like working with, go ahead and use that. And then you're going to need some sticks. And in this case, I've got a bunch of these. These are just some stir sticks from a coffee place, and I've sorted them just to make sure that they're all basically straight and flat. Sometimes you can get them; they can be really, really wonky. You don't want to use those ones for making the sticks; they just end up being a nuisance. So I'll just set those off to the side for the moment, and one of the first things I need to do, you're going to need some kind of glue, and you can use, I've used for quite often, I've used these glue sticks, and there's a variety of different brands out there. You'll have to kind of determine whether, one works better than the other. These ones work okay. They used to work better before they got this green, little label on them. Um, I'm not as impressed with them since they've gone to this whatever they call a formula, earth-friendly formula or whatever. But in any case, they will work. What I've been using that I find I get my best results from is a contact cement, and I'm using like in this case, I've got a couple of different kinds of contact cement that I've used over the years for these things, and I think most contact cements work just great. There are some water-based contact cements. Like the problem with these ones, these these contact cements is they're a solvent base, and they're pretty strong, pretty gassy, and you want to work in a well-ventilated area when you're doing this. In our classroom here, I've got an exhaust fan going along the wall that pulls the air outside, and I've got in front of me, I've got a little Razer 530 that I'm just going to turn on to a low speed setting, so it'll just pull some of the fumes directly away from me. Um, anyway, you have to kind of experiment a little bit, figure out which one works best. I find the the contact cement gives me better, stronger adhesion, better results. If I'm going to spend the time making these things, I'd prefer to have something that's going to stand up, and stay together, not something that's going to come hard on me. So what I've done is I've taken a piece of this 220 and I've cut it to a little bit longer. This is 4 inches wide, and that works out perfect. You can cut a piece 4 inches if you're just cutting with a sheet. I'm just going to take a little piece of that of this. I'm going to tape this down just because it's a little easier to work with when it's laying flat. So, and I find that you could just make 1 or 2 sticks at a time if you want. Like you don't have to make a whole bunch of them. We're in the middle of a class. We got 8 people in the classroom every week. And I find that it makes more sense for me to, it's going to make more sense for me to make a bunch of these sticks so everybody can use them. We're busy working on these birds. We've got a big job ahead of us carving these open wing bald eagles. And I don't want to distract the class by stopping to make sanding sticks, but we're going to be using them extensively. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my contact cement here, and I want to put a generous little coating of contact cement over the entire backing of the paper. I've just got a tongue depressor here that I'm using to spread the contact cement out with. But I want to make sure I get a good coating of contact cement over the entire surface of this paper. Contact cement works in such a way that you really need to, in order for it to work properly, you want to have the cement spread on both surfaces that you're going to be gluing together. And so you coat the surface with your contact cement, and then you can set that aside to dry. When it gets dull, like right now it's shiny, when it gets dull, it's pretty much ready to use. So that's the sandpaper. Then the next thing I want to do is I want to get these sticks laid out. And it's just kind of a workflow that I've come up with when I've been doing a number of sticks, like a number of sanding sticks. I'll take I'll take the sticks and I'll just arrange them side by side, get them all kind of lined up like this. I'm noticing some of these sticks, they probably come from different coffee shops or whatever. Some of them actually, I think, were little stir sticks or craft sticks that I bought at a dollar store or something like that. So they don't necessarily have to be all the same, but I want to put them basically fairly close to each other like this. And then what I want to do is I want to get the contact cement. I don't need them over the entire surface. I only need it over, 4 inches at the top. So I can take my pencil and just kind of mark in roughly from there out to the end is where I want to be. I'll be clipping off the ends, these little round ends. I don't need those. But so then I can take my contact cement again on the little stick that I had here. I can put a layer of contact cement there, hold this down, and just kind of hope that's not going to work. Kind of spread it out. I'll push these up here. There we go. Push them down into this little holding stick. Stuff can be a little messy to work with, but Sometimes when I'm working with these things, I'll use a little brush. That can work good too. The brush is pretty much shot when once you get it soaked with contact cement. There are sticky stuff. There are contact cement thinners and cleaners, but usually they're going to be more expensive than the brush that you're cleaning when all is said and done. So probably would have been a good idea for me to tape these down. That might have been the smart thing to do. Hey, I'm actually used to making these sticks at home in my shop, and I've got a pretty good setup there for that. So you just want to make sure that the entire surface of these is coated. I've got a little bit here that didn't quite cover on these ones, so I'll just spread a little bit on there manually. Make sure that they all have a little coating on them. And now we let that dry. I'll clean off my glue there and wipe it off with a little paper towel. But now, so we're gonna let this there we go. We're gonna let these sticks dry. So our sticks are dry now, and the this isn't well, it's not shiny, but it feels dry to touch. Like when you touch it, it feels dry. Some contact cements will actually get very, very dull when they're dry. This particular brand that I've used here, I guess, doesn't get dull when it's dry. It stays, but it feels dry to touch. So then what I want to do is I just want to take this and line it up um, over top of the sticks and then press it down. The thing that's nice about contact cement is it adheres almost full strength right on contact. Like it's really good that way. So you stick it on there, and we can I can then just kind of lift up some of these little sticks here. I was using a thinner cardboard that would be a little easier. I think a thin ruler here, tuck it underneath, sort of wedge it underneath here, just so that I can lift some of these guys off. Once I get this started, there we go. I just lifted these sticks off the board. I got some glue that obviously ran through in between, and I can just take a piece of paper towel and take some paper towel here and wipe off my sticks where that glue isn't quite, the sticky glue kind of came through. We'll let that dry. Now at one point when I started making these sticks, I used to make them with like a 220 grit on one side and a 320 grit on the other, sort of a two-sided stick. It's nice, but what ends up happening is when the 220 side gets too smooth to use, or the 320 side gets too smooth to use, you kind of got a half useless stick. So because these sticks are basically free or dirt cheap, I don't worry about double siding them or anymore. I'll just make a 120 stick or a 220 stick or whatever I want to do. So now that I've got these done, my next step is they're as I say, pretty much permanently adhered as soon as you stick that on there. And if you're just doing 3 or 4, just cut a little smaller piece. It's a little easier when you're doing smaller numbers. And then you want something that you can separate them with. You can cut them. So I'm just using a scrap of wood here that works well. If you have a cutting mat, the cutting mats work really, really well as well. You'll want a snap blade knife, something that's got a sharp blade on it like this, and you just kind of come down. You will be wearing these blades out as you use them. Like they only get so many cuts before they get too dull to be practical. But I just kind of go through. So there's my first stick. this excess glue here, uh, you can kind of, when it's not super hard, super set up, you can kind of rub it off if you want, or you can just let it dry. Once it's dry, it isn't sticky to touch or anything anymore anyway. So you just cut them up like that. And yeah, I just, you know, where the sandpaper is here. Just get between each one of these things and just separate them that way. Just start cutting them apart. So you can make as few or as many as you want. If you got a carving club and you want to make sanding sticks for everybody in the club, you can make a group of them this way. Works nice for trimming trimming the sandpaper. So I'm not going to go on video. I'm not going to go and cut all of these things apart. You get the idea that, so I've got 3 of them here. And these are 220s. Move my little board out of the way. And then what I find, you could just use scissors for this. I think the scissors would work okay if that's all you've got. What you want to do is you want to put an angle on the end of the stick here. So, you know, scissors work. Sometimes they cause the especially if these haven't been sitting for that long, like the glue is still a little bit soft. So you notice it kind of pulled away on the end here, just a little tiny bit. You know, it was all the way to the end. And so I find that if you've got some side cutters, any kind of a side cutter like this, side cutters tend to work better. They don't put the pressure like scissors do. They kind of squish things. So I clip the end like that. And what I've found is that I always want to have the end I want two different kinds of ends. Like I want one end that's at one angle, one end that's another angle. And the actual, how sharp you make that angle is up to you. You can make it sharper or not as sharp, but I find that it's really useful to have that sharp angle on there. And then once you've got these kind of cut down like that, what I do is I take a coarser sanding stick. This is just a sanding stick that we use in our classroom. And I put them at an angle like this, and I sand the end down to make the end thin. Sand down till I get to the, get a really nice thin end on the thing. And then I also sand the other corner here just a little bit. So you end up with you can see kind of a little point there. And I do that on both sides, like both angles. I'll do it on the left angled one and the right angled one. And I want to get down as nice and thin on the face here. And then do the other point. So now what I've got is I've got a set, and I find that one side, you need both really to work with it. So now the advantage of this is when you go to work on your delicate detailed bird carving, and we will be in the class later on, we'll be separating these wing tips, and you're going to need to get down inside. But you'll find that this works really well for getting in here. If I'm coming in from the other direction, not as well. So that's where, you can pick the one that works best for wherever you're going. Like you can go right into a little corner here. Just use a little tiny movement, a little bit on the corner. And this will get you right down into some really tight little corners, tight little areas. It also allows you, like I can go along the edge here, but it also allows you, this one wouldn't work so good, but the other side, now I can set it this way and I can use it to sand the edge of the feather, and I can use these to come in and come in underneath. This blank is Tupelo, and I don't have anything. Well, there's a little bit here. We're seeing if I've sanded this one completely already. But if you've got any areas that are a little bit on the rough side, they're just a little bit not perfectly smooth and perfectly even, a little sanding stick like this will make incredibly short work of smoothing everything off and making that feather, making everything look nice and uniform and smooth. Sometimes it takes a bit of time, like I'm feeling a bit of a bump right there on this one. You can see it, but just kind of run this back and forth. The beautiful thing about sanding sticks, because they're a hard surface, they will only, when you run them over a piece of wood like this, they'll only take off the peaks or the mountaintops. They won't get into the valleys. So as long as you keep on going back and forth and back and forth, it brings down the highest points. And if you need something really, really smooth, you keep going until you get down to the valley. And see, if I wanted to carve along this, sand along this edge, this is along this inside edge here. This isn't the best angle for that. This one works better. I can run it along. So you use both of them in tandem. Now, the other thing that's great about this is when one of them starts wearing out, eventually, as you're using them, the end wears down. These ones aren't too badly worn, but the end wears down. You see there's not a lot of grit right on the end of this anymore. So all you need to do is just take your cutters, snip that little bit off the end. You get some new grit on the end, sand it down, sharpen up the end, and you're good to go. You just kind of keep on moving down, knocking off that little bit. And as you use these, you'll eventually wear them down to nothing. It's not that big a deal to make more, but they last surprisingly long, especially if you're using a really good sandpaper. You can also use, if you're using a little bit bigger one, you can use it for just generally sanding where you've got especially wood grain that's showing you want to smooth that off. They make really short work of that. They'll also smooth things off if you got a few little rough spots from using power tools. Sometimes when people power carve, they get a little bit of washboard. Sanding sticks, like little ones, big ones, whatever, they all work much the same way. If you're going to make a big sanding stick, it's the same basic idea. Just start with something a little bit bigger here. Put your contact cement on the sandpaper, stick it on there, and you can trim it, or you can make 2 or 3 of them side by side if you want to do it that way. The sky's the limit on that. One other little variation that I found to be really useful is if you have the ability, like a bandsaw or something, you can take a piece of dowel. In this case, I used a 3/4 inch dowel, made a little jig on the bandsaw, cut it in half, and then sanded this face smooth. And then I took some 120 grit. This is SIA paperback paper, but again, you can use anything you want. But I took this 120 grit SIA paper, and I just kind of laid this down here and rolled it around and cut this so that it was exactly the right size to fit on this stick. There's a little seam in this corner here. And I just put the glue on there, the glue on the paper, and lined it up and kind of wrapped it around the sanding stick here. This is great if you need to get into, concave areas. It works really well for that. And it's got a flat side that you can use for general sanding stick as well. So you make these in any grit you want. Again, like I said, sky's the limit. Use whatever kind of sticks and different things you want. But these are the main little secret weapon. And I use these when I work on wingtips, primaries, different things on birds, especially these open wing birds. You're going to see, like on Facebook where we post progress on this, you're going to see these wings getting very, very thin, these wingtips getting very, very thin. You'll see air in between them. We have to sand them so they're nice and smooth and get them ready to burn the feather shafts in and all the feather detail in. And I would be completely lost without my little secret weapon sanding sticks. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please, we'd appreciate it if you do that. And we'll look forward to sharing more stuff with you soon.